In fact, saying that we have to be prepared to face the kind of situation that we require to face because of the situation in West Asia. He says that we need to be united, and also he says that it could be long drawn, but he's saying that India is pursuing the matter diplomatically and also carrying on with efforts to mitigate the crisis as best as possible. How do we see the Prime Minister now focused with regard to the West Asia crisis? Because it looks like two challenges are before the government of India. One is about the 1 crore diaspora who's there. If the situation becomes even worse, they have to be brought back. And also the energy part of it, where the Prime Minister himself has said that now the energy needs have been diversified when it comes to importing. We have moved from 27 countries to 41 nations, ensuring that there is a diversity of supply.
That's right, Varghese. See, Prime Minister Narendra Modi started his address in Lok Sabha by stating that the current situation of the West Asia is worrisome. But Prime Minister also emphasized the fact that the fundamentals of a country is very strong. He says that whether if you talk about the power plant, if you talk about the petroleum, or if you talk about the crude oil, the stocks are there. Prime Minister Narendra Modi also emphasized that the priority of the central government right now is the domestic consumers. So he says that the domestic consumers did not fear. In fact, he also points out that India has strategically moved to 41 countries when it was earlier reliant on 25 to 27 countries. So they have moved to 41 countries. So as a result, India has diversified its import as far as crude oil or natural gas is concerned. Now, Varghese, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also emphasized that this is a challenging time. The situation may become worse going ahead, and this particular time it is very much important that the country must come together. And that is the reason why not only he is having discussion with his with all the Gulf nations. He had twice had telephonic conversation with Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian, but also the interministerial committee will be formed, and this committee will be given the charge of negotiation with Iran. And he also pointed out that the closure of the Strait of Hormuz is unacceptable. Prime Minister Narendra Modi clearly stated that the negotiations are going on. He also said that some of the vessels have crossed the Strait of Hormuz. Some of the vessels are still stranded. The talks are going on. But he once again said that the only solution through this is dialogue, and he urged all the countries which are involved in the West Asia conflict to have dialogue to end the crisis. But Prime Minister Narendra Modi once again said that the people of the country does not have anything to fear. India has enough stock as far as crude oil or natural gas is concerned, and the domestic users are the priority of the central government. And he also pointed out some of the schemes that have been launched by the central government, how it has helped in over dependence as far as the crude oil or the natural gas is concerned, whether it is the railways or whether it is mixing ethanol with petrol, and also providing solar system to the farmers, which has reduced their dependency on diesel. So he says overall the country does not need to fear right now, as the government continuously is monitoring the situation, and in the coming days a committee of interministerial secretaries also will be formed, who will be given a charge to continue the negotiations with the concerned parties.
So, Sabir, in the domestic front, with regard to the diesel fuel, he's been talking about how the farmers, most of them in fact do run diesel jet pumps, and he says that there has been an effort to mitigate that as well, to ensure that the supply of diesel is there. But at the same time, he has said that there is a movement towards solar powered pumps, and that's been working on the ground as well.
That's right, Varghese. See, the government pointed out that there is a scheme from the central government which helps solar panels in rural areas across the country, so that the farmers of the country are less dependent on diesel. That point has been emphasized by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He also said that the electrification of the railways also has helped depending on diesel. He also pointed out the use of metros in different parts of the country. He also spoken about introducing electric buses in different parts of the country, which has also reduced the dependency on petrol as well as diesel. Now, regarding LPG, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that at this particular time, the priority of the Indian government continues to be the domestic consumer. So the industrial on the industrial part, clearly the government says that they are holding negotiations they are holding discussions with the Gulf countries, because a lot of the natural gas and crude oil comes from the Strait of Hormuz. And in several times, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has emphasized the fact that how the present government has diversified its imports from crude oil, diversified its imposed from only 27 countries to 41 countries at present.
Also, at the same time, Sabya, we have been talking about diesel, the fuel that in fact runs most of our heavy vehicles. The Prime Minister is saying that the electrification, especially with regards to trains, it has in fact paid out large dividends in the as of now, because you don't need to in fact allocate a huge amount of diesel to trains as it used to be. So, looks like the electrification model is something that the government will be exploring when it comes to public transport.
That's right, Varghese. See, already in several states, we see the metros are running. In fact, at this particular time, it's a signal from the present government to use public transport as much as possible, like metro or electric buses, to reduce the dependency as far as on petrol and diesel are concerned. Now, Prime Minister also said that at this particular time, it is very much important that the country stays vigilant. If you talk about the maritime security, if you talk about the cyber security and other threats in these sectors also, he has advised the government to be extremely vigilant, because at this particular time, there are a lot of rumors going around. He also emphasized the fact that people of the country should not fall prey to rumors. It could be spread by opposition, it could be spread by other propaganda. So at this particular time, it is very much important that the country should not believe in rumors, but believe what the central government has to say. And very rightly, the Prime Minister pointed out that there is nothing to worry about. At present, India has enough of petrol and of crude oil and natural gas in its stock, and at this particular time, the focus of the present government is to make sure that the negotiations carry on with the counterpart, to make sure that the vessels which are still stranded at the Strait of Hormuz would get a free passage.
Also, Sabya, at the same time now, there are several points he had been looking at. One tricky situation has been with regard to being in touch with the countries that are facing this issue, especially the war in West Asia. You have the Gulf states on one side, you have stakeholders like Israel and Iran on the other side. The Prime Minister did a very important tightrope when it comes to diplomacy. He said that he has in fact expressed concerns about attack on energy infrastructure and that it would affect the entire world economy. But he also said that when it comes to the closure of the straits, such as the Straits of Hormuz, it's a vital strait or rather trade gateway, and it is not acceptable for it to be remaining closed. So clearly, with a lot of diplomatic effort also being going at the back channel, saying that something of a peaceful settlement should be in fact brought to the current war, but he also telling that we have to be prepared for the longer run.
That's right, Varghese. Prime Minister Narendra Modi said that the current situation is worrisome, though on one hand, India has hold talks with all the countries in the Gulf region, whether having a discussion with Iran or whether having a discussion with the Prime Minister of Israel and UAE and all the countries which are involved in the West Asia conflict. India has hold discussion with all the countries and time and again retaliated that the only way out is through discussion. But India is also aware of the fact that the current situation can go worse, because on one hand, if you have the 48 hours ultimatum from President Donald Trump, and on the other hand, Iran also retaliating that there could be a retaliation from their side as well, and it could lead to the permanent closure of the Strait of Hormuz. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi today very bluntly pointed out that the closure of the Strait of Hormuz is not acceptable at any given cost, because whether if you talk about fertilizers or other important materials that pass through the Strait of Hormuz is extremely crucial as far as the economy of the country is concerned, or the nation building is concerned. So at this particular time, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has urged the people of the country to be prepared for any worst situation. But he also said that India is looking for solutions. India has diversified its imports from 27 countries to 41 countries. So yes, on one hand, India is looking for alternatives so that the people of the country don't have to bear the brunt of this conflict.